Hello and welcome to a tutorial on the cranial nerves that move the eyeball. That is going to be cranial nerve number 3, your oculomotor nerve, cranial nerve number 4, your trochlear nerve, and cranial nerve number 6, which is going to be the abducens nerve. So to begin with, the oculomotor nerve is going to have an oculomotor nucleus that is located in the periapictal gray matter within the midbrain that is just ventral to the superior colliculus. And this oculomotor nucleus is going to have various subnuclei that are responsible for movements of the various muscles that it's actually going to control, to include your inferior rectus, your medial rectus, your superior rectus, just to mention a few. Right? And the fibers of the oculomotor nerve, they're going to curve ventrally through the tegmentum from this oculomotor motor nucleus, and they're going to emerge from the medial side of your cerebral peduncle within the interpeduncular fossa. And the nerve then goes through the subarachnoid space, goes through your cavernous sinus as well as the superior orbital fissure. And I'm going to come back to that when I talk about the cause. And you're also going to have another nucleus for the oculomotor, which is also located in the midbrain. This is going to be your adeno-westphal nucleus, which is going to be having the parasympathetic component that is within the oculomotor. And this adeno-westphal nucleus is located just dorsal to your main oculomotor nucleus, and the fibers are actually going to accompany the main fibers of the oculomotor system, and the preganglionic fibers are going to terminate within your ciliary ganglion just behind the eye. Then you're then going to have your postganglionic fibers traveling via the short ciliary nerves to reach the ciliary muscle as well as your sphincter pupillae muscle. Then you're going to have the trochlear, which is the most slender nerve and the only cranial nerve that is going to have decussation within the brainstem before it emerges from within the brainstem. It is also the smallest cranial nerve. It's purely motor. Of all the cranial nerves, it is also the only cranial nerve that is going to emerge with the dorsal aspect of the brainstem. Right. The nucleus of the trochlea is going to be immediately just caudal to the nucleus of the oculomotor. The nucleus for this trochlear nerve is going to be located at the level of your inferior colliculus, unlike that for the oculomotor nerve, which is located at the superior colliculus. Right. And this trochlear nerve is going to innervate a muscle that we call the superior oblique, which is responsible for depressing the eyeball, inwardly rotating the eyeball, as well as abducting your eyeball. Right. Then we're going to have the abducens nerve, which is the lover's nerve, because back then it used to be used as a signal or communication between teenagers who were dating. This is also going to be a purely motor nerve, and its nucleus is located just below the facial colliculus. To give reference to the video on the facial nerve, you're going to have the internal genu fibers that are going to arc over this nucleus of the abducens, and that is what will form the facial colliculus that we find in the floor of the fourth ventricle. Right? And remember, the abducens nerve will emerge at the pontomedullary junction as the most medial nerve root, followed by the motor root of your facial nerve. Then you're going to find the nervus intermedius, which is the sensory root. Then, okay, so what I was saying now is the abducens nerve emerges at your pontomedullary junction, and it's going to emerge as the most medial root, then followed by the just lateral to it you have the motor root of the facial nerve, then you have the nervus intermedius, then you have the vestibulocochlear nerve more laterally. Right? Then the nucleus of the abducens contains interneurons whose axons actually cross into the contralateral medial longitudinal fasciculus, for the reason that when you're moving one lateral rectus to go laterally, the lateral rectus of the opposite side should be inhibited, at the same time stimulating the medial rectus to follow. So these interneurons, they travel rostrally to the oculomotor subnucleus of the medial rectus on the contralateral side to stimulate it, so that the medial rectus on that contralateral side will then follow the lateral rectus on the other side. Right. So functionally, the functional components of your oculomotor, you have the general somatic afferents, then you have the general visceral efferent. And in terms of its course, remember, it runs forward and laterally between your posterior cerebral artery and the superior cerebellar arteries, and just lateral to the posterior communicating artery. And an aneurysm of any of these arteries can actually compress the oculomotor nerve and cause some clinical pathology, as well as an aneurysm that affects your internal carotid artery within your cavernous sinus, right? Then it's going to pass through the tentorial notch of the tentorium cerebelli to reach the midcerebellum, the midcranial fossa rather, meaning a transtentorial ankle herniation can also cause problems or a lesion to the oculomotor nerve, right? Then it then pierces the dura mater and in what we call the oculomotor triangle, and it enters the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus, where it then divides into an upper division and a lower division. Remember, those two divisions are going to be found within the superior orbital fissure, and they're going to be separated by the nasociliary nerve, which is a branch of the ophthalmic division of your trigeminal nerve. Right. So the upper division will give you branches for the superior rectus and branches for the levator palpebrae superioris. And the lower division will give you branches for the medial rectus, the inferior rectus, as well as the inferior oblique. More importantly, this lower division is the larger division of your oculomotor system. Right? So any lesion of the oculomotor nerve can then present with this. You're going to have ptosis, which is drooping of the upper eyelid due to weakening of the levator palpebrae superioris. You're going to have a lateral squint. Why? Because the lateral rectus, that is for the abducens nerve, will still be functioning. Then you're going to have a dilated and fixed pupil due to the affecting the parasympathetic fibers that are coming from the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. Then you have loss of accommodation, you have proptosis. Then you also have diplopia on looking up, medial and lateral, due to the muscles that you actually affect. Unlike the diplopia that you expect when you have a lesion of the trochlea, which is going to be on looking down, right? So the trochlea, like we said, it emerges on the dorsal aspect of the midbrain on either side of the frenulum veli, and it passes between the posterior cerebral and your superior cerebellar arteries. And it also gains access into the cavernous sinus, and it's going to lie between the oculomotor nerve above and your ophthalmic division of the trigeminal nerve just below. Then it also enters the superior orbital fissure, and it's going to innervate your superior oblique muscle, like we said, which is going to be responsible for inwardly rotating the eyeball. It's also going to depress the eyeball, right, and as well as abducting it. Then we have the abducens, which is going to innervate our lateral rectus. This is going to be cranial nerve number 6. It's going to be responsible for having your eye look out, and then lesion to this abducens will result in an eye that is having a medial squint, because there's no longer tone balance between lateral movements and medial movements of the eyeball, right? And this nerve, it pierces the dura mater over the clevus, just inferolateral to the dorsum celli. If you remember your meninges, or where you find the pituitary gland, then it also passes through the medial wall of the inferior petrosal sinus. Then you also find it within the superior orbital fissure, of course within your common tendinous ring, just to the side of where you find the nasociliary nerve separating your two divisions of oculomotor nerve. Right. So that's just about it. Thank you.